your menstrual cycle is a normal shedding process. It's not supposed to be interrupted, okay? I don't care how long these birth control pills have been out here for. The longer we continue to stay on these things, the more damaging effects are going to be passed down from us to our kids, so on and so forth. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Doc Jacque Show. Today, we are going to talk about something that I have been constantly asked about. Whenever I put in like an Ask Dr. Jacque on Instagram or with patients or with friends, family, etc., everyone's like, Jacque, you need to do a podcast episode or something in regards to birth control. Here we have it. So let's talk. All right, so birth control, should you have it? Short and sweet? No, you should not. The only birth control that you should have is practicing safe sex and or tracking your cycle to know when ovulation is, like natural family planning. Make sure you know when you're fertile, be smart, and don't have sex during that window, okay? Or if you're going to, use condoms. Or, you're rolling the dice every time. I mean, you're still rolling the dice with condoms anyways, but you can still at least hedge your bets. Best thing if you're like, hey, I definitely don't know if any of that's going to work. What can I do? Just don't have sex. Simple as that. So let's dive into why. Now, when I was making this episode up, I wanted to make sure I took good notes. And all of this stuff, honestly, it's so easy to find. All you need to do is a simple Google search. Just Google it. Seriously. You don't have to go Google MD. You don't have to go WebMD, PubMed, NCBI. You don't have to do any of that. You can just frontline search birth control, types of birth control, side effects of birth control, risks with birth control, you name it. It's all right there. But I thought of something that was kind of clever, and I'm probably going to turn it into a little quote card here. So team, if we could do that, it'd be awesome. Everyone is consuming birth control like they're consuming iTunes updates. Because we just click accept and consume without reading the paperwork. When there's a new update for your computer or your phone, you don't read what bug fixes it's going to do or what it's going to what's going to happen to your phone. You don't care. Boom. Okay, whatever. I have to take it. I need to update it. I'm good to go. You're doing the same thing with birth control because doctors, they're not telling you this stuff. I can almost guarantee you that when we are done with this podcast here today, that you probably haven't heard your doctor, your OB, your fertility specialist, whatever, ever mention these side effects associated with birth control. And at the end of this, if you're still on birth control and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? There's plenty of things that you can do to get off birth control. Okay. Now, again, my licensing, I can't tell you to get on or off any medications, but what I can do is just educate you on the risks associated with each and every one of them. So there's some basic birth control techniques out there, right? We've got, if we want to be inappropriate, we've got the pull-out technique, which doesn't, there's not that scientific, but, you can hedge your bets a little bit in that realm. The other thing, we talked about abstinence already, or you can use condoms. Condoms, though it may be less enjoyable, I don't know what technology is nowadays, but maybe less enjoyable, but it's a much safer alternative than what we're getting into today. The other thing with birth control, ladies and gentlemen, is if your man, if your husband, if your spouse, if anybody is trying to tell you to do something that you don't want to do to your body, then you don't have to do it. If your husband's like, I need you on birth control because I don't want to have another kid, be fucking smart about how you're having sex. Because what you're doing is you're sacrificing your wife's health because you don't want to have another kid. Pretty freaking selfish. Okay? So when we're talking about these birth controls, if it's a woman's choice, that's fine. If you listen to this and you're like, hey, it's still just easier for me to just take my pill or keep my IUD in or whatever it is, or the injection in your arm. If that's what you want to do, at least you know, because knowledge is power. At least you have made an informed decision. You know the other side. That's how these types of things, these decisions need to be made. You need to weigh out the pros and the cons. The pros of birth control is you've got like a 90-some% rate of success in terms of not having a child. If that's your ultimate goal, well, there's a lot of other ways you can go about it, but if you want to sacrifice your health for that goal, I can't stop you. I just can't do it. And then men, if you're out there and you're listening to this and your wife's on birth control, your girlfriend's on birth control, or they want to come off of it, get them off or support them through this process. Don't be an idiot. Don't be selfish. Love on them and help them through this process, because it's going to be hard for both of y'all coming off of birth control, because a lot of things can change. One thing in particular, I posted about this on Instagram, is taking birth control, okay, I believe it's specifically the birth control pill, will actually change who you are attracted to. So say you're on birth control since you're a teenager, like most women get put on that. They go to the doctor for another well visit. Oh, you need to get on birth control. You don't need to, but okay, here you go. Okay, so you're on birth control. Then you marry your high school sweetheart, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, let's start having children. You come off the pill, and what's happening is you've already got a decrease in sex drive, okay? Because the pill will definitely make you have a decrease in sex drive. And then you come off the pill, and then it's like this filter, the pheromones change, and you're like, I'm no longer attracted to this guy anymore. Why am I with him? Why would I want to have a kid with this guy? I don't even want to touch this guy. Why am I in this marriage? Okay, no shit. Look it up. All right, there's been some research that has been done on this. It'll change who you like. It'll change all of that. It'll change your sex drive and who you like in particular. If that's something that you want to sign up for, then, good luck. So again, for men and women who are together and the woman's coming off of birth control, just be aware that you can have changes like that. You just need to balance your hormones back out and reconnect at the same level that you reconnected with when you got, married, or when you started dating. Okay. So let's dive into the different types. So we talked about the first two there. So the most common birth control, whenever it comes to like your IUDs, is going to be associated with like your Mirena, right? So an IUD, intrauterine device, they inject it in there. Things associated with those IUDs in particular, these ones release progestins, which is supposed to basically stop you from being able to have the ability to get pregnant. Like all of these are basically going to be doing. But it is a hormonally based, it's a synthetic progesterone, so it's a hormonally based birth control. Remember, any time that you put something in from the outside, your body's natural production goes low. So when you come off of it, your body's production was told, hey, Mary, you don't need progesterone. I'm taking this in from the outside. So you come off of birth control, you have low progesterone. What's going to happen? You're going to have estrogen dominance, right? One of the most common side effects with birth control is weight gain, breast tenderness, breast cancer. You're going to have estrogen dominance, massive weight gain. If your cycle does come back, you have a higher risk for clotting, bleeding, cramping, all of those emotional mood swings, etc. And you're like, oh my gosh, I felt so much better when I was on birth control. Well, you're taking synthetic hormones. So of course you felt better, but you're still ignoring the underlying cause as to why you're on it to begin with. Another one, if we're talking IUDs, we're like, oh, what about the copper IUDs? So the copper IUDs basically causes just massive uterine inflammation that makes it really difficult for implantation to take place of a fertilized egg in there, okay? And you can look at this. I mean, when we talk about IUDs, the actual process of getting an IUD put in there is very difficult, because you can have ectopic pregnancies that take place where the egg implants where it's not supposed to. You can have the IUD dislodge and go into other areas of the uterus and through the entire area, and it can go and it can damage and it can cause inflammation all throughout. And so remember, chronic inflammation is the basis of all disease process. So if we're talking about uterine cancer, cervical cancer, etc., with an IUD in, you're directly causing inflammation to very sensitive tissue. That's why you're not getting pregnant. But in the long run, you're going to be constantly having inflammation to that area. It can sometimes make sex unenjoyable because, again, an inflamed reproductive set down there is going to make it difficult for penetration. Changing of the vaginal mucosa is going to be different as well. It's going to be a little bit more acidic, so it's going to be more dry more often than not. And it's just overall, the whole thing of it all is not going to be an enjoyable experience. So it takes away the joy and the fun of sex anyways, okay? Now, dropping down from the IUDs, we got the birth control pills. And I'm not going to go like fully into like massive detail to each category unless y'all want me to do that at some point, and I can dive in a little bit deeper. But with the birth controls, okay, you can have different types of birth controls. You can have what are called combo pills, which is where it has synthetic progesterone and estrogen. You can have the mini pills, which is just your progesterone or your progestin. And then you have another kind called a SLIND, I believe it is. It's progestin only. And so those are your typical types of birth control. It's designed to stop your ovulation. And ovulation is when you have that chance and that ability to be able to get pregnant. And what it does is it changes, again, the uterine lining, the lining of the uterus, to make it really difficult for implantation to take place down there. Now, again, you don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be a scholar. You don't have to have graduated second grade to know that if you are changing the surface of the vaginal mucosa or the uterine lining, there can be damaging side effects of that. You're directly causing inflammation. Okay, so like each time you're taking your birth control, or however long you're taking birth control, it's like continuously running on a sprained ankle. You're constantly causing inflammation to that area. Now, when we go back to like the IUDs, I've heard stories, a lot of stories, unfortunately, of women who are like, listen, I want to get the IUD out. In the extraction process, there's doctors who won't do it. There are doctors who can't find it, or they'll damage the tissue as they're trying to extract it. There's a lot of risks associated with these things. It's crazy, okay? Now, when we talk about the sex drive, we already talked about how birth control can change who you are actually sexually attracted to. So what else can happen? Lack of sex drive, you can have nausea. So what does that mean? We're going to break down each one. If we have nausea, right, what area of the body is going to be affected? Your gut is going to be affected. Your gut's like your second brain. I call it basically your first brain. So your gut's not going to be 100%. I've had women come on and off of birth control through protocols. And when they're on birth control, okay, their digestion's different. And then when they come off of birth control, sometimes they'll get constipated and like, what in the world happened? Well, birth control runs the risk of also causing an increase in fungal infections or yeast or candida overgrowths in your gut. That can cause a slowing down of the bowel movements, okay? Because a lot of it causes, again, a weakening of the immune system. We have headaches. So what is an actual headache? A headache is inflammation in your brain. I don't think that there is a worse area for you to have inflammation than in your brain. So these birth controls can do that. You can have spotting or bleeding during your periods. Spotting or bleeding. So again, your menstrual cycle is a normal shedding process. It's not supposed to be interrupted, okay? I don't care how long these birth control pills have been out here for. The longer we continue to stay on these things, the more damaging effects are going to be passed down from us to our kids, so on and so forth. Because I have a feeling they're going to try to slap kids on birth control before they're ever even in puberty. And if they could take puberty away, I'm sure that they would do that as well. Okay, and I'm sure there's some crazy parents out there that would be like, yay, that means my daughter won't get pregnant because they're afraid to have the birds and bees conversation with their freaking kids. Anyways, breast tenderness. What does breast tenderness mean? Usually breast tenderness can be associated with an infection from the gut that can impact the breast tissue, or it can be a massive increase in estrogen. Again, if we have those combo birth controls, we're taking in that estrogen, high estrogen with the inability to be able to get rid of it, can then cause excess cell proliferation, which is where cancers come into play. You can have an increase in vaginal discharge. Again, we kind of talked about the yeast there as well. And then we can have abdominal cramping. So we got skeletal muscle issues. We have digestive issues where you're finally feeling like you're cramping over. Like, I can't do this anymore. What else can it do? It's like, oh, is that not enough for you? I mean, lack of sex drive. If this was a guy and you're like, hey, we're going to put you on birth control, it's going to kill your sex drive. I feel like 99% of men would be like, no, I'm not getting put on that, right? Serious risks, deep vein thrombosis. That is life-threatening. Heart attack from these things. Strokes, pulmonary embolism, okay? These things are very, very serious. It's not like your fingernail is going to have a black speck in it or you're going to get a little random scab that's going to hit your finger and like, oof, I'll shake that off. We're talking about life-threatening things just because you don't want to have a child and you're not willing to change your hormones to fix it. And we'll get to that. And sometimes, again, you trust your doctor, hook, line, and sinker. Your periods are horrible, so on and so forth. And the only solution that your doctor had for you is to put you on a pill, Mirena or patch, whatever the hell they had in their back pocket, whatever rep came to them last, they're going to sell you that. So we got past that. Now, risks. And these are risks even when, because I was curious about this, I clicked on Planned Parenthood, risks associated with birth controls. I was like, well, I wonder what this biased freaking organization is going to say. What tells you right there? Combo pills don't take if you've had breast cancer, blood clots, clotting disorder, heart attack, stroke, angina or other serious heart conditions, uncontrolled blood pressure, serious diabetes, or serious liver disease. Avoid progestin pills if you've had lupus or if you've had breast cancer. And avoid the SLIND1 if you've had kidney disease, adrenal insufficiency, liver disease, cervical, breast, or ovarian cancer. At what point should I just stop and just say, I think you have enough information here? I mean, really, how much more information? How many more times do we have to tell you that this is so damaging for your health? From just a fundamental, holistic, innate intelligence standpoint, you are physically stopping your body's natural process. You're synthetically putting hormones in your body. You're automatically going to be dealing with side effects from that. And then you're telling your body, no, I don't want to get pregnant. Even though I was designed to do this, I know better and I'm stopping this right now. You can't stop Mother Nature. You can't. Side effects will occur. And some of the side effects too, when you're on the pill, it can sometimes cause scarring of the uterine lining. And what happens is you're still sometimes shedding just like you would if you had your menstrual cycle. But it has this bubble net, this blister net, if you will. And each month you get more and more and more in there. And then it'll say it's unexplained spontaneous bleeding where you just boom, purge out. And it looks like, you've had, just a faucet of blood just coming out. Not to get too gross for you guys, but maybe I need to get too gross for y'all. That is a side effect of birth control as well. So this is all just basic stuff that, everyone should be told, especially when you're getting put on birth control. So more side effects, again, when we're talking about the cancers, is going to be your breast cancer, endometrial cancer, ovarian cancer, your blood clots, pulmonary embolism, heart attack, stroke, and dementias in this one as well. And then, so I pulled this up here as well. So cancer.gov, all right? So cancer.gov, it said one study found that 10% increased risk after 5 years of use, okay? 10% increased risk of cervical cancer. For those who have been on birth control for 5 to 9 years, okay, 60% increase, okay? 60% increase of cervical cancer. You think most women are, nowadays probably put on at 12, 13, we'll just say 15. By the time you're 20, you're still on birth control, you're in college, right? And now you just jumped a massive thing here and you're like, oh shit, now I'm running a super high risk of cancer, but nobody ever tells you that. Nobody ever tells you that, okay, our increased risks of cancer, not just hey, there's a small possibility. It's this is a massive freaking risk. 60% increased risk of cancer with 5 to 9 years of use, and a doubling of risk with 10 or more years of use. So doubling of risk, 60, it's like 120% risk of freaking cancer from 10 plus years of use. You're on at 15, 25, right? That 10 years, 25, 26 years old. You've already massively increased your risk of cancer. And yet you're just sitting there and you're still consuming this stuff. You're still putting this stuff in your body. And for me, as a guy, I don't understand why you would want to do this. I think, because I work with infertility all the time, I think bringing life into this world is one of the most amazing, miraculous things that I've ever seen before, ever. I mean, we've had 2 home births, and my God, the birthing process, it's such a beautiful thing. It is so primitive, primal, beautiful, and then you get just amazing baby that you didn't even have to consciously think about for 9 months. And it's you had to think about it. Obviously, you had to make sure you eat right, but you're not hey, today, body, I need you to make 5 fingers or 10 fingers and 10 toes. And tomorrow, I need you to make sure that digestive tract is formed properly. And then let's figure out what we want to do with the brain. Let's figure out how big the brain's going to be. Sit down and truly think about the miracle of being pregnant, conceiving, being pregnant, creating life inside you, and then birthing that life out of you. And then you're okay, cool. And then boom, you can feed them directly from your body. No, I'm not envious of women going through pregnancy or the birth process. I love y'all for being able to do it. But I can tell you right now, if a man had to do it, we would sis out 100% of the time, because a lot of us don't exactly have a high pain threshold. My wife is a beast, but I'm fairly confident she could probably take a little bit more pain, especially down there, than I could. All right? No offense, Megan. I love you. So when we're talking about birth controls, right? Why do we get put on birth control? It's either going to be societal or peer pressure, right? All of our friends are on it. We don't want to get pregnant. We're worried about that. We had the birds and bees conversation, and your mom said, hey, if you have sex, you're absolutely going to get pregnant. We've got boyfriends who are trying to get people to get on birth control. We've got our doctors now who are trying to shove birth control down our throat. And it's just like a common thing. Just like, hey, I take an Allegra for my allergies. I take birth control for not getting pregnant, right? And then what else can we pull from that? So we have the societal or the peer pressure, and then we have the random ass treatment model. It's like you're using this stuff for off-label use, which means that the pill wasn't designed for these things. They're talking about hormonal acne. We're going to get you on the pill. Depression, we'll put you on the pill. This, that, and the other thing, we'll put you on the pill. Like, it's literally like if you are between the ages of like 12 and like 25, if you've got a problem, they're probably going to try to put you on birth control, some way, shape, or form. Why? I don't fully understand it. I don't know what the kickback system looks like for birth control, but it doesn't make any sense. And the longer that we're on these things, in my opinion, there's a lot of research saying otherwise, but coming from just logic, I think this is something that is massively fueling the infertility epidemic that's out there. Okay, because we're taking synthetic hormones in, and they're like, oh, your body will bounce back, rate of fertility can go back up, so on and so forth. But what about those women who can't? Even if it's just one woman who can't get pregnant because of birth control, that's one woman too much, because they were told or lied to that they would be fine being on birth control, and then that can tear apart their relationship with their husband who wants to have a kid. They can't build a family, and then what? Because that doctor, when you were a teenager, was an imbecile and didn't educate you on what the risks were associated with that. They just, like the iTunes agreement, they just automatically assume like, hey, I had a little bit of CYA right here. I'm going to cover my butt and I'm going to just give you that pill. And if you want to read through that, go for it. If you have questions on it, I'll deny it, which I've heard. I'll deny those questions and say, no, that's not true, even if it's written on the actual insert. Because the doctors don't read the dang inserts. They don't care. They're just plugging, chugging. You've got this problem, take this pill. You've got that problem, take this one. Oh, that one didn't work for you, let's try this one. They're trying to come up with all these creative different birth controls out there, but the fundamental thing of it all, and I've talked about this before, is anytime, okay, a prepubescent girl is going through that transition into puberty, I feel within the first 3 or 4 months or so of her getting her period, she should have her hormones tested. A full Dutch complete or Dutch analysis of her hormones. Get the adrenals in there too, because school is freaking stressful. Okay? Then from there, we have the ability to be able to help the hormones. So say you did have horrible cramping, or you had PCOS, or you had endometriosis, right? Quick fixes, get on birth control. But then they're going to tell you that you'll never be able to get pregnant, which is a freaking lie. It's a lie. I don't care if you've had PCOS or endometriosis or any other type of issues like that. I'm here to tell you that your doctor is lying to you. You still have the ability to. You need to figure out what the cause is, allow those tissues to rebuild and repair properly, stop the cell proliferation, which is causing, the fibroids or causing the polyps or whatever it is that's growing. And then once you regulate your cycle, you're a normal human being, okay? You feel good. You don't have to worry about the weight gain associated with birth control. You don't have to worry about your massive increase of cancer. You don't have to worry about ectopic pregnancies. There's so many fears that women get over the years. I mean, they're forcing pap smears on women. Oh, what's that for? Cervical cancer? Well, if you're on freaking birth control, I already read you the stats. It already massively increases your chance of cancer, cervical cancer. The proper thing that should be done, again, is when you hit that puberty age, and parents, if you're listening, if you got young girls, even boys too, I think this is really important, make sure you get a hormonal test done on your kid. And I'm going to tell you, this is unfortunate, but your doctor is not authorized to run this test unless you're working with me or another, naturopathic health expert or functional medicine doctor, because insurance isn't going to cover a test that they can't medicate with. Okay? But when you do that Dutch complete, you're going to see exactly what's going on in the body. So parents, you'll get a normal child back. If they're like, oh my gosh, I need to put my kid on birth control because they're freaking psycho. Every time her cycle would hit, or she's skipping school, she can't go because her flow is too heavy, right? These are all serious, real conversations that patients have had with me that we've been able to reverse just through diet, nutrition, lifestyle changes, and proper testing and supplemental protocols. And then it sticks. And then from that point on, that girl is then able to be in control of her cycle. That's when the natural family planning becomes incredibly easy, right? And again, parents, if you're listening, like, oh my gosh, like natural family planning still means my kid's going to be having sex. I don't know. I have no idea. But at the very least, if we have this whole birds and bees conversation, you're like, here, Mary, you need to take this test here real quick. We're going to make sure that we get your cycle all balanced out. And then just make sure you can track your ovulation. If you're going to be sexually active, we can all be adults here. Make sure that you're not doing it during your ovulation windows. Here's a kit, ovulation strips here. You can track your ovulation with that. You can do body temperature, ovulation tracking as well. And then that way you have all the information that you need to be smart and responsible whenever it comes to you and your body. And I can almost guarantee you that your daughter will turn to you and say, that is probably the most informed conversation I've ever had in this area that I've ever seen. Sex ed, this should be textbook sex ed. Everyone should get hormone tests, men and women. Get it, learn what makes you you. Learn why you respond the way that you are. Don't just consider this as just, a genetic thing that's passed down to you or just who you're going to be your whole life. Your hormones are going to display who you are. If you're a horrible person, if you're a mean person, you could have an androgen excess. You can have too much testosterone. You could be pushing too much DHT. And that's really damaging for the body. And if you're giving progestin and some estrogens, some synthetics in there, you're still not going to mess with those the androgens, and you can still have problems with that further down the line. Okay? And that's the other thing too, is like people get put on birth control and they're so fearful of coming off because they're afraid of, it could be that they're afraid of not being in love with their spouse. It could be that they are worried about weight gain or having the cramping again or whatever it is. But if you know how to do it, it's not hard. It's not difficult. We've been able to help people get off birth control all the time just by their choice. They're like, hey, I stopped birth control. I'm like, okay, cool. Let me know how your cycle is going. You can do basic stuff. Test. You can test your hormones. I usually tell people about 3 months or so after you've come off of your birth control, run a test. Or in the process, if you're like, I don't want to wait that long, Vitex Acnis or Chase Tree, you can take some Chase Tree and work on bringing up your natural progesterone production. That by itself is something that's massively profound for a lot of women's health. And some people are like, oh, my PMS symptoms went away, my depression went away, my anxiety went away, I have energy now, I have this, that, and the other thing. And it's just like check. And they were told when they were younger that it would never be possible. It would never be possible for them to be quote unquote normal. So I wanted to do this podcast today because I'm so sick and tired of people being lied to and misled and being told that this is the only thing that's there for them. This is the only option that they have. You have to take this or else. You have to do this or else, right? And again, when we think about what we're doing, we are blocking the body's natural process. So please stop doing that. If you have questions or need support, or if you're like, hey, what about this birth control? What about that birth control? What do you think? My answer is still going to be no. I don't approve of them. Unless you're doing, again, a natural family planning, tracking around ovulation or a condom or abstinence, no other form of birth control is going to be acceptable by me. Sorry. Because I'm not willing for you to sacrifice your health to not become pregnant. All I ask is for a little bit of responsibility. And it's going to sound crass. It might sound mean. You're a guy. You don't understand. You're right. You might not think that I do understand. But I understand from a holistic standpoint of what you're doing to your body. And now you know as well. So each time you go to take that birth control, or each time you go to your checkup, your follow-up, or you get a new IUD put in, or a NuvaRing put in, or whatever, you now know, you are educated, you know what the risks are associated with that. And at the very least, if you're still going to do it, if you're still on a medication, or if you're still on something like that, go back and you can go to the website, you go to Bayer, or whoever makes that medication, and take a look at the laundry list of side effects that's taking place, and do what I just did. When it's saying nausea, what does nausea mean? Nausea means there's inflammation and damage to your digestive tract. What does a headache mean? It means inflammation to your brain tissue. What does it mean weight gain or heavy discharge or what? Oh, you're going to mess with my freaking estrogen. No wonder I'm going to have an increased risk for cancer. So now you'll be educated enough to read through this stuff to make that decision. And again, if you still want to go on birth control, I'm not going to judge you for that. I am just going to try to keep giving information out there so that we can have a world where people have perfect hormones. Infertility isn't a thing anymore. We just have great success stories We don't have to worry about IVF. We don't have to worry about IUI. We don't have to worry about what's going to happen to kids that are born from those methods. We have all natural everything. That is my hope for y'all. So it was a little bit shorter, a little bit sweeter for this topic, but I had to get this one out there. Thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to leave a rating, and we'll talk next time.